Hey there, everyone. My name's Kyle Banaz, and I'm the marketing manager at Netreo. I'm also joined by Andy Markowitz, our technical product manager. Excited to have you here today. We'll be discussing the newest addition to Netreo's product lineup, Microsoft 365 Insights. And on the agenda, first we'll go into a small bit of background on the subject area and discuss some of the challenges we've heard about from our customers and in terms of getting visibility into Microsoft 365 Productivity Suite. After that, I'll bring in Andy and we'll get into the specifics of the product and walk through the primary features. We've earmarked time at the end of this presentation for some Q&A. However, we'd like to keep things interactive, so if you do have any questions, please enter the questions in the question section of your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll be keeping track of those. And with that, let me turn the presentation over to Andy. Andy, the virtual floor is yours.
Thanks, Kyle. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be signed in from. Thank you for joining us. I'm quite excited to run through this presentation with you today and share the details of this product. We've been working on it for the last little bit, and it's neat to see it finally come to fruition. In the interest of brevity, I'm going to make the assumption that everybody attending today has at least a cursory knowledge of what the Netreo IT management solution is and what it does. For those of you new to Netreo, again, thank you for your time. And secondly, at the conclusion of this session, please let us know if you'd like additional information, and one of our account executives will get in touch with you. All right, so first we'll go into a little bit of background here, right? Unless you've been living under a gigantic rock since, I don't know, the mid-1990s, you're probably aware of who Microsoft is. And unless you've been living under a slightly smaller rock for the last 5 or 6 years, you're also aware of what Microsoft 365 is. For the uninitiated, Microsoft 365 is a line of subscription services that allow you to use their Office software and other tools like Exchange, SharePoint, Skype, Teams, among others. Okay. Now, according to the data analysis firm Statistica, as of April 2020, Microsoft had a 43% share of the online productivity market. As you might expect, in addition to other facets of their business, the company is no slouch in this area either. Now, given that kind of market share, Microsoft doesn't need us for free advertising. However, if you ask them, they'll tell you subscribing to their services makes nothing but sense. They'll say the platform is more secure, more reliable, and compatibility with other systems is going to be better than installing and maintaining your own versions of the software. Now, whether or not it's better to run your Office suite email applications right in your infrastructure or rent it from Microsoft, I suppose that's up for debate. However, a 40% share of the market is nothing to sneeze at. Chances are you're going to encounter it at some point. Better or not, here's something Microsoft isn't going to tell you. When you don't have direct control over the core applications that are crucial to your organization, you also don't have the visibility to fix problems when they pop up. So what are the challenges in getting visibility to your Microsoft 365 tenant? Now, there are actually a few of them. So when you choose Microsoft 365 as your solution provider, or any other SaaS application for that matter, you're effectively paying for the privilege of having somebody else manage your applications for you. One of the inherent weaknesses in this scenario, however, is that by default, you're not really going to be able to track end-to-end performance of the hosted application. That application is essentially a black box from the perspective of your network and your infrastructure. When a user calls and complains about an application being slow, how do you know where the problem is? Right? Sure, your vendor will give you SLA guarantees, right? But without a, pardon the pun, window into their infrastructure, right? How can you be sure they're living up to their promises? Now, the next challenge, right? It's not in Microsoft's best interest to tell you when you're spending more money than you need to be, right? It'd be nice if they had a big banner message on the top of their login portal that said, by the way, you've only activated 60% of the licenses you purchased from us. Give us a call and we'll issue a refund. Yeah, but in the words of a boss I had during high school, right? Nice is for rainbows and puppy dogs, right? This is the real world, Andy. And there you have it. We're in the real world. Yes, license consumption data is available through the API that Microsoft publishes for their services. And there's also dashboards you can create to find that information through tools like, Power BI, but it's not straightforward or easy to do either. Now, this next challenge is actually an offshoot of the idea I just mentioned. API integration into your existing tools isn't easy either. While it certainly is possible with the documentation Microsoft provides, the question IT leaders then need to answer is, how much is my technical personnel's time worth? Right? In other words, if you opt to use Microsoft's tools, the choice is between two less than ideal consequences. Either take valuable engineering resources to handle the customization, integration, and support internally, or simply use the Microsoft Service Health Dashboard. The Service Health Dashboard is a good resource. However, it probably is integrated with the rest of your monitoring tools, right? Therefore, additional inefficiencies will be introduced to your IT processes, right? Having to jump from one console to another simply to get a big picture view of your IT landscape. Now, obviously, SaaS providers monitor their own infrastructure, and Microsoft is no exception. Given the size and criticality of Microsoft's assumed customer base, it would be foolish to think they don't know down to the second everything that's going on in their infrastructure. However, therein lies the rub, right? It's their infrastructure. They don't have any idea what's going on with the IT resources you have to manage. However, your customers and your users don't particularly care about that distinction, right? To Wally in the accounting department, who just needs to send a message to somebody in purchasing, email is email is email. He doesn't care what system it's on, it just has to work. Now, if you're relying on something like the Service Health Dashboard to tell you things are working, that view is only going to be from Microsoft's perspective, not from the perspective of your users on your network. Okay, so given the size of Microsoft 365 customer base and the visibility challenges I just enumerated, something has to give, right? Well, it does, right? Enter Netreo's Microsoft 365 Insights add-on. This new package gives your IT organization complete visibility into the Microsoft 365 productivity suite. And there's three primary components to the Insights add-on, right? Response times to each of the major services that are part of the Microsoft 365 suite. This checks and displays the response time from your network to the Microsoft cloud. There's synthetic email checks to exchange online to test mail flow and performance. And it also runs several queries against your 365 tenant to give you visibility to the right to those resources and to your license utilization. So we know what it is, but it's also important to examine, right, what benefits it can bring to your monitoring strategy. So Insights is going to help you drive efficiency among your IT engineers, as it'll save them time from a tool consolidation point of view, right? If they no longer have to use multiple tools to view the status of all the IT components they're responsible for, then that's a win. As we alluded to before, yes, the engineering team could roll their own solutions utilizing the Microsoft API, but that also begs the questions, right? Is that the best use of your technical staff's time? I mean, shouldn't they be maintaining and managing your IT resources rather than maintaining tools used to monitor those resources? Okay, Insights is going to help you manage your IT spend. The benefit here should be fairly self-explanatory. Microsoft 365 isn't inexpensive for an organization to deploy. After all, customers are basically paying for their privilege to have somebody else host and maintain their mission-critical apps. From an IT leadership perspective, it's imperative to make sure a company is utilizing what it's paying for, right? It's no secret right now that the economy is taking a beating as a result of the COVID virus, right? Therefore, keeping a lid on operational costs is especially top of mind for leaders today. Right, and then last but certainly not least is that Microsoft 365 Insights is going to improve SLA attainment, right? While the other two benefits would be of the most interest to IT engineers and IT leaders respectively, the most direct recipient of this benefit is going to be your IT operations and NOC staff. The important thing to note here isn't that there's a single dashboard that shows the status of 365 tenant. You could get that from the Service Health Dashboard. However, a NOC operator can't get that kind of view of how everything's actually tied together, right? What are the service, system, and application dependencies throughout your entire infrastructure? How are all those variables related to an outage? If all that information is available in a single integrated tool, then problem isolation is quicker, tickets get routed to the proper teams faster, and MTTR times will decrease. It logically follows then, right, that SLAs will be met or exceeded. All right, so let's dig into some of the specifics of the add-on and how it addresses the challenges I covered just a second ago. We'll start with locally sourced service response times. Given the challenge of not getting end-to-end visibility, the way Insights addresses this problem is by running locally sourced service response time checks to each of the services in the productivity suite. When these checks are run from your on-premises Netreo deployment, it effectively mimics what your users will experience because they're attempting to access the same services, and they're sitting on the same network, right? So you're going to get an approximate, right, user experience for users on your network. Now, on the main dashboard page, what you'll see is an overview of the status for that service in terms of availability and response time latency. But then you also have the ability to drill in and look at the details of that monitoring history as well.
Hey, Andy, we have a question here. So customer wants to know, what's the monitor and check interval on these response time checks?
Okay, so that's a good question, right? On these response time checks, right, the interval matches all the other pulled intervals within Netreo. So they're run every 5 minutes. The checks are run every 5 minutes, and then these histograms that you see here are subject to the same roll-up scheme. So that means you're going to get 90 days of 5-minute data, 6 months of 30-minute roll-up data, right? And then following that 6-month period, then you're going to have 3 years of 4-hour averaged data. Good question.
Yeah, so we actually have another question here. So
Okay.
that one is, does it monitor users' Office 365 mailbox size?
At the present time, it does not. However, provided that, actually, no, I take that back. We're, as part of the license and resource utilization stuff, it is going to show it. Now, it is going to show it. I'm going to get to this in just a second. It's going to show it in the aggregate, though. But that's actually a good point. That's something that is something I will make sure gets added. We're going to talk about futures in a little bit here, and I'll make sure I get that noted down. But right now, your storage utilization is going to be on the aggregate. Okay, good. Okay, so the next, all right. So the next feature in the add-on is the ability to quickly and look at resource utilization from a license perspective, right? So, monitoring your storage and licensing usage allows you to right-size your service contracts and tightly control your operating expenses, right? Perhaps another way to frame this challenge and the Netreo solution is to ask the question, right? Are you getting your money's worth? This kind of ties in, right, Kyle, to that second question, that question just a second ago. You can see the bar graph here. You can see the bar graph here that checks out exchange mailbox size, but right, this is in the aggregate, so it's not going to drill down into specific users. Now, we ran into a situation in the recent past where an IT director I was working with, this is when I was with the solutions group here at Netreo, and they made a comment that they were in the process of transitioning over to Microsoft Teams from Slack for collaboration, right? However, he was having difficulty getting a beat on how many people had actually started using Teams. I guess user resistance and stuff like that, right? At the time, I didn't have a suggestion, as this was before Insights existed. So this director's only alternative was either to muddle through setup of a Power BI dashboard or find somebody to help make the necessary calls to the Microsoft Graph API. Luckily, right, answers to that question now at your fingertips with this add-on package. Okay, so the next one here, I labeled this intuitive UI and familiar functionality. Now, it might sound silly, right, to claim this is a feature in a software add-on we release, but remember what the specific obstacle is that we're trying to tackle here. Integration into your existing monitoring tool set, right? And to avoid having to hop from one console to another, especially when troubleshooting a system outage, which is so important, right? Now, when including this add-on in your Netreo deployment, right, you'll be able to take advantage of all the quote-unquote plumbing, right, that's already present in the other parts of the solution for all of your other monitoring variables, right? So the phrase that I like to use when we're speccing stuff out is, well, if we design something in this manner, we get this for free, right? Metaphorically speaking, we've already written the code for that. And it only makes sense that we're going to have things, behave the same way. So any alarms that are generated from Microsoft 365 Insights are going to be subject to processing through the incident management engine. So you can deal with alert suppression and rules that way. You'll have the ability not only to set static thresholds, but you can also look for anomalistic behavior as well, right? And then of course, all the variables tracked here are also eligible for Top Talkers inclusion. Therefore, you can run ad hoc reports, or you can also create custom reports, set up templates, set them for automatic delivery, right? So people, right, know what's going on and they don't have to worry about other dashboards or anything like that.
Hey, Andy, we have another question here. So the question is, can I put the Insights add-ons alerts into a maintenance window?
So that's an interesting question. I was actually wondering if the topic would come up outside of our whiteboard sessions when we're discussing the design and the features that we're going to go in here, right? Although this is subject to change right now, the answer is no. You can't put Microsoft 365 Insights as a whole into a maintenance window. Our rationale here was that since this is a SaaS service, it won't ever go down, so there's no need to put it in maintenance, right? This is the part where I get uproarious laughter from the studio audience. Of course, all of us that have been in IT most of our careers know that if something can crash, it probably will. However, again, consider what we're talking about here. This is a SaaS service. Even if it does crash, you're paying for that to be somebody else's problem, not yours. We'll likely talk about this topic more when enhancements are discussed down the road. In the meantime, if for some reason, right, you'd need to silence alerts from the package, the add-on can be disabled as a whole through the Netreo administrative UI.
Hey, Andy, we had another question come through here.
Sure.
Is it possible to trigger actions based on an O365 incident?
Yes. Short answer is yes. It is able to trigger actions. So the only catch here, right, if you will, is that at this point, customers have to do all the heavy lifting as far as generating that action, right? So you can execute a PowerShell script. You can execute SSH into a device. So you can do those things. If you've got the script on the back end that Netreo can call, absolutely. You absolutely can.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah. All right. So then the last feature that's included with Microsoft 365 Insights, right, is the ability to do synthetic email and web application response checks, which addresses the potential problem of not getting real service availability. So, checks like this allow you to quantify performance and identify hidden service problems. Remember that tools like Power BI in the Microsoft Health Dashboard are only displaying problems from Microsoft's perspective from within their infrastructure. They know nothing about your environment. So by adding checks like this, you're getting that end-to-end view of how things are really performing. Now, folks listening in that are familiar with Netreo already know that we've had the ability to do synthetic email and web application checks for quite some time, right? This is actually the same technology. The only difference here is that we've taken those quote unquote chunks of code and also included them in the Insights add-on dashboard. The overall idea is that we want everything in a single page, so you're not clicking around all over the place looking for information.
Hey, Andy, jumping in here again. We have another
Yeah.
question from the audience. So the question is, a few slides back, I saw the wording locally sourced, and I'm assuming it applies to these synthetic checks too. I understand these checks are run from my Netreo appliance, but what if I have users scattered over many geographic areas?
That is a phenomenal question, right? And as it turns out, it's also a phenomenal segue into my next slide, which is the future of the Microsoft 365 Insights add-on.
So, and just want to check with you real quick. There's actually
Yep.
another question. It sounds fairly similar. So, how do you intend to monitor the Microsoft 365 services from different locations? Is it possible to do that from, let's say, service engines deployed in different offices across the country or world?
Yes. So as of today, kind of, sort of. So let me actually get into it. The short answer is yes, right? So at the present time, locally sourced means that a given synthetic check, either web or application, is run from the perspective of the Netreo core appliance itself. So if Netreo is deployed in your data center, the check is run from there. Now, we just released as in yesterday, the ability to run these checks from a Netreo service engine, which is effectively, right, a UI-less Netreo appliance that communicates back to a core system. If you happen to configure the check to be run from a service engine deployed in another location, that's the perspective reported in the generic application response dashboards, right? Whether that's WebArt or whether that's going to be email, right? So this capability does exist, but it isn't yet integrated into the Insights dashboard. So if, for customers on the line listening, yeah, you can actually do that. You can set the location you want to run it from. It just wouldn't be in this particular dashboard yet. Right now, where we envision taking this capability in the coming months, right, is to go to more of a probe-based architecture, right? So instead of requiring a large footprint full OVA image for the remote presence, which is what a service engine is, a smaller service could be installed on a workstation or a branch server or something like that, that literally just reports back response time and runs synthetic checks that way. All right, so the next thing we're looking to add to the Insights dashboard, right, is integration of hosted SharePoint application information. Again, these capabilities are already, these are capabilities that already exist in the larger context of Netreo through the generic web application response checks, right? However, it will be invaluable to have that information at your fingertips without having to navigate to a completely different screen to see that desired data, right? Okay, so then the third thing that's on here is Active Directory and hybrid visibility, right? If you took a look at those dashboard screenshots I put out, there's nothing for Active Directory there. There is nothing in the first release for Active Directory, and there wasn't anything on that dashboard. Now, AD isn't technically part of the Office Productivity Suite, thus the reason it wasn't included in our initial release. But I'm guessing a lot of large organizations that take advantage of Exchange Online or hosted OneDrive, right? They also need to make sure that hosted AD and the hybrid setup is fully functional as well. We're still working out the specific details here, but visibility will likely get into looking at the behavior of Azure AD Connect and its associated components. And something that's worth noting here, and this is probably more for the folks listening that aren't yet customers of our solution. Just like the capabilities, right, of distributed response time and synthetic checks, Netreo can also get AD and hybrid architecture health metrics now, right? We are a full stack visibility solution. What's missing here, and what will be reflected in these futures items, is getting that data integrated into the 365 Insights dashboard, right? In the meantime, if you have questions about what can be done today for visibility, I would definitely encourage folks to reach out to our support and operations team. Or, right, if they are not customers yet, make sure these are questions that are brought up during the discovery process with our solutions architect, and you can get pointed in the right direction. Right, and then last but not least, right, there are always other things we could add. Right, quite honestly, we rely on customer feedback for enhancements like this. So if anybody listening in has suggestions, right, then myself or the other folks in the product team are certainly always willing to listen. So let me actually pause again really quickly, see if anybody has any other questions.
Yeah, Andy, and while we wait for those questions, I'm actually going to launch a poll here to see
Okay, good.
how we can help our audience further. So those are definitely some great questions. I think we covered all 7 of them, but if you do have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. We'd love to
Awesome.
answer anything that we can.
Awesome. So let me actually let me continue here. So in terms of adding Microsoft 365 Insights to your Netreo license, right? We are offering an incentive for early adopters. Some kind of a promotion. I don't have particular details on it, but it's probably going to be a discounted rate off the cost for folks that sign up before a certain amount of time. So if you're interested, then let us know, and we'll have an account say that 10 times fast. We'll have an account exec reach out to you. Right. So then the other announcement, right? We've got the beta program, right? Now, we're going to formally open our beta program for this add-on in a couple days here. Now, we've already got a small handful of customers that are planning on participating, but as the saying goes, right, the more the merrier, right? For those of you not necessarily interested in evaluating pre-GA release, but still do want to get your hands on it eventually, we're intending on a general availability release of Microsoft 365 Insights on June 5th, 2020, so a little less than a month from now. And again, if there's any interest in either of those from our studio audience, please let us know in the comments questions section of your webinar. Okay. All right, so just really quickly here, right, for the folks listening that aren't currently customers, I wanted to give you a quick insight of who we are, right? Netreo is a comprehensive IT monitoring and management solution. Netreo has a 20-year track record of success, right, with global brands that have trusted us to help them get visibility to their IT resources. And over that time span, we've achieved a 98% customer retention rate. So our folks stick around with us for quite a while. Now, we recently just became the highest rated vendor on Gartner Peer Insights with a minimum of 10 reviews and 100% willingness among our customers to recommend deployment of our solution. All righty. So let me take another opportunity here to see if there are any questions people want to lob out there. Yeah.
So no other questions yet, but we do have someone who does want to try the beta, so that's awesome. We
Super.
will certainly follow up with you following the webinar.
Very cool. Good. Looking forward to it. All right. I mean, that's all I had. So thank you very much for taking time out of your day to participate. Kyle, I'll go ahead and hand the reins back to you.
All right. Oh, actually, we might. So live demo. So we'll be conducting those on an individual basis. That was an ask, Andy.
Okay. Yeah. So short answer there is because we're getting this thing prepped for beta and getting it prepped for install. I don't have a decent demo system to use. I did this morning, and I don't now. So when we're ready to get this thing out, once the beta kicks off in a couple days here, actually tomorrow, once the beta kicks off, let us know, and glad to take you into a system and take you around the various places you can point and click and how it works.
All right. Well, thanks, Andy. I think that wraps up all the questions, and I think that wraps up the webinar. So thank you all again for joining today. If anyone has any additional questions, please let us know. And beyond that, enjoy the rest of your day or evening. All right, take care.
Take care, guys.